About half a year ago, I made a video discussing why so many WoW players have switched over to Oldschool Runescape. It quickly became one of my most watched as players and content creators alike peeked behind the curtain of a different kind of MMO and discovered something worth playing. It even got an Asmongold reaction. See? Right there, between why young men don't like Democrats and migrant mob attacks courthouse, ICE deports entire building. So, that's nice. In this space, Asmongold reactions are pretty rare. I'm not even a guy in front of a green screen. Take that, Idol, Jimmy, others. And he even said this.
I really think this is a great video. I was glad that I watched this, and I think that I pretty much agree with everything he's saying.
Clearly, this video is going to age perfectly. Anyway, let's check in on some of our favorite RuneScape streamers.
I'm playing both, my friend.
All y'all bitch asses, I'm out of that Gilnor shit. I'm on here, new world style, new world.
The return to hardcore WoW.
New world.
I lost interest. I was addicted to the game, and I feel like I completely lost my touch with the game. I have no interest in doing dailies in a bullshit game.
I'm out of that Gilnor shit. I'm on here, new world style, new
Bullshit game.
Oh, okay, let's talk about that. I promise I'm not joking when I say that I think that video has remained relevant. It outlined elements of OSRS that are appealing to fans of the MMO and explained why so many WoW players, particularly those who played a lot of Classic, have found themselves enjoying RuneScape. In no small part because of a massive content drought in WoW. While I think that WoW is still within a content drought, Blizzard has announced a re-release of its first expansion, the Burning Crusade, which naturally is garnering some attention, especially due to Sodapoppin's ability to create another OnlyFans event, wherein all these streamers can once again collaborate and have a great time. Ever since that video of mine, many a WoW player has came and went, etching their mark on the world and the content creation scene that defines it. Some more than others, but ultimately the flock has become but a few remaining creators that continue on, and even that feels short-lived. Why? The answer is simple. These creators played a lot of Oldschool RuneScape. In fact, most of them played more OSRS than they did Classic Anniversary during OnlyFans a year ago. While their adventures were short-lived from the perspective of an old-school RuneScape player, these aren't your normal old-school RuneScape players. Their career is streaming video games. They likely played more RuneScape in half a year than most of you have in the past year. Just look at their stats. It's no wonder that many of them have burned out, having grinded so hard. Also, there's more WoW content coming out, something that wasn't happening back when they started. There's no reason to look at this in a black and white way. You aren't just an OSRS player or a WoW player. In fact, if I had to guess, most streamers want to just be players, MMO and otherwise. I doubt that they won't dabble in OSRS in the future, especially if Blizzard messes something up again. Finally, some may not have stopped playing at all. As Savix put it, bouncing between two separate games confuses viewership and negatively impacts a streamer's career. But that's the broad answer, and we will talk about this broadly. But there are also specific answers, specific to creators, their motivations, and their goals, as well as some important takeaways for prospect players, content creators, and even game developers. So let's get into it. As I see it, burnout is one of the two main culprits that causes departure. I'm sure most of us know what burnout is, but in my perspective, burnout is achieved through certain environments. What causes an individual to burn out is a feeling of stagnancy, a lack of movement. So if your journey through a game is like a long, winding road trip, burnout would be gridlock, endless traffic. When you feel like you aren't making progress, then you end up perceiving time spent in the game as wasted. OSRS mitigates this by having loads of different goals to incrementally work toward, but also brings this upon itself by having certain pitfalls in its progression. Incredibly rare drops that gate a huge swath of content, such as the Bofa and its respective crystal armor obtained through the Corrupted Gauntlet, is actually a great example of this. While the content is great, it also acts like a bottleneck for Ironman. Until you complete it, you feel restricted from breaking through into the endgame, even if that's not always the case. No surprise then that quite a few of these WoW streamers quit around this time. Shobek, for example, got his enhanced crystal seed relatively early, but at that point clearly felt the weight of Burnout pushing him away. The same kind of issue exists with specific skill grinds in OSRS, skills that feel singular in their purpose and have very limited output, like agility in the later levels. It's not rewarding to train because it provides so little. The same applies to smithing, mining after a certain point, firemaking, runecraft, hunter, thieving. Wow, there are a lot of skills in this game that need some work, but that's a subject for another video. To lay out the issue, these are people who play games as a career. Their jobs rely on them being entertaining, and that is difficult to do when experiencing a level of burnout. Burnout stems from long hours, a lack of diverse content, i.e. being stuck in the corrupted gauntlet, and slow progression, gridlock. The impression of immobility can also happen thanks to setting far-reaching goals that you don't make meaningful progression toward every day. So if you just started the game and decide, I want to get the Inferno Cape, every day won't feel meaningful in your journey to achieve that. Oldschool Runescape does rely on setting goals. That's the only way to get invested in the game, but they need to be curated goals, balanced around your current place. If you're new, think Dragon Slayer, Dragon Defender, Dragon Scimitar. If you're in the mid-game, think Bofa, Quest Cape, Osmumten's Fang. If you're in the endgame, that's when Inferno, Colosseum, and the Theater of Blood become possible. This all comes to a head when there's also some misunderstandings of the game's purpose. I'm not trying to imply that these WoW streamers were playing the game wrong. That's the beauty of OSRS, you can play however you want, just that expectations may have birthed gridlock. I've said this before, but World of Warcraft is very much combat-centric. Combat is 70% of the game. It'd be 90% if we're counting the time spent traveling between the next combat encounter, 95% if we're counting waiting for groups to fill for combat. It's singular in its purpose, and that also applies to classic WoW, even when it had a broader, slower-paced goal in mind. Not a problem, but also not anything like OSRS, which is maybe like 30% combat-centric, certainly when playing an Ironman. If that is your preferred game mode, you simply can't only be doing combat. I say this often, but RuneScape isn't just a point-and-click adventure game, and it isn't just a rhythm game. It's also a management game. You are managing your supplies, your inventory, your loadout. These are micro puzzles being solved every single time you do just about anything in the game. It's what creates so much engagement in the most minor action because maximizing efficiency is part of successful management. Every time I see people balk at efficient players, how can you have fun doing that? Well, for the same reason you have fun playing Factorio, RimWorld, and Stardew Valley. Aggregating resources through planning is satisfying. And then having content to use those resources on for impactful account progression is the best feeling in the game. But that only happens if you enjoy that part of the game. For example, if you only join RuneScape to do the PVM because that's the most immediately fun element and the most viewer-friendly, well shit, that's gonna make your overall journey feel really bad. You're doing things you hate just for the off chance that you'll eventually get to the parts you don't. And that's broadly what I think happened for a lot of WoW streamers. The OSRS PVM is clearly very engaging. If you've never played, you may look at the screen and scoff at the colored squares and simplistic graphics, but OSRS has more mechanical depth for the individual player than just about any MMO. I say this as someone who rated cutting-edge content in WoW for many years. The mechanics in OSRS are not only harder, more punishing, and require more attention, but the game itself has more depth to its moment-to-moment gameplay. That's not to say mythic raiding in WoW is easy, just that it taps into a different skill set. It's group-centric, meaning that simplistic mechanics are made far harder when 20 people need to be doing them flawlessly and in tandem. But individual mechanics in WoW rarely exceed that. Moving left, moving right, standing there, hitting that, interrupting X, pushing P. The difficulty is in coordination. In OSRS, the difficulty stems from anything but. So if you don't like the management aspects of RuneScape, then you likely won't connect to the game. And if you only want to do the PVM, don't make an Ironman, right? That's the other broad criticism levied at these streamers. They shouldn't have made Ironman. And I wholeheartedly disagree. There are only two kinds of people streaming non-Ironman in the OSRS space. Very talented PVMers like No Monkey, Mulgold Kirby, and so on, and very talented PvPers such as Odablock, Dino, and West Ham. Otherwise, even if you're a new player, Mainscape is just kind of fucking boring to watch, especially when you have viewers capable of giving you anything you need. While you can say just don't accept handouts, not only is that easier said than done, it also doesn't dispel the myth that it happens regardless. Similarly, the journey of Ironman, the need to do the wide breadth of content in the game, both good and bad, is what makes for compelling streams. Recently, Sardaco went for the Inferno Cape, one of the hardest items in the entire game to obtain, and after 70 odd attempts, he got it. I don't think this would have hit as hard if he was rocking full Bis, range, and mage with a 3-bill setup. The setbacks, the failures, mechanical and material, is what made the effort engaging to watch. That's what connected the viewers to the stream. They're not always fun, but it makes for the better story, the more exciting overall experience. Ironman mode is the de facto story of Oldschool Runescape. It's not just for those who love grinding, and that hasn't been the case for like 8 years. It's there to give incentives to explore every part of this game and gain value from those parts. It's meant to be a natural form of progression. If I were to say anything in hindsight, it's that I wish there was more consideration for some group Ironman between players who stuck around for longer, as that can alleviate the mid-game resource grind. I can say that from experience, as my first time with OSRS was as a group Ironman, and look at me now. Now that we've covered the broad reasons, let's dip into specifics. To perform a good analysis, I wanted to reach out to some of these streamers and get their perspectives. I couldn't communicate with all of them, but those I did helped me a ton, so thank you. I sat down virtually with Jokered last week for an episode of my Fireside podcast. If you're wondering what that is, it's a show where I bring on all kinds of wonderful content creators to yap about games, content creation, and more. You can find it on my second channel with the full Jokered episode uploaded. I've had Alien Food, Josh Isn't Gaming, the CEO of MMOs, and even a Jagex developer, Mod Grub, on to chat, with lots more coming in the future. As a thank you to my channel members, they also gain early access to future episodes of Fireside on my main channel. So if that interests you and you want to support these projects, feel free to become a member on this channel. Anyway, Jokered was the world first max level in Classic WoW during its release in 2019. I remember watching his gameplay at the time and genuinely being in awe at how much of a grinder he is. So it shouldn't go as any surprise that he is one of those streamers that got incredibly invested in RuneScape. It kind of hits the elements of an MMO that speak to him. When I asked him about the departed streamers, those who left, he had this to say.
One of the worst things that I can think of as a streamer is you go live and you don't know what you're doing. You don't have a plan. You don't have a task to do. You're just like kind of like grasping at content, right? Which is something that I have many issues with WoW, because I've played WoW for so long. I've made so many characters. It's just like at some point you're scraping the bottom of the barrel. There's just not that much left, right? And I feel like with RuneScape, it's just like a bigger barrel of like almost like a never-ending ocean in it, right? So like I really like that about the game, where there's just so many ridiculously long grinds, and I feel like I could just never run out of things to do. So that's kind of what keeps me playing, as well as just trying to like, you know, do stuff, get things done, like level up the skills. Like I've been working on the achievement cape since I finished my quest cape, right, which is a while back now, and I still haven't even probably done half of it. So it's just one of those things where that's kind of what keeps me going and playing the game. Maybe for the other content creators, it was more about like doing the quests, maybe just checking out a bit of the mid game, right? They started playing before me as well, to be fair, right? So maybe they had their fill. I'm not sure. Like I can't really put myself in their shoes that well, you know?
A core reason why Jokered not only stuck around, but went on to achieve some genuinely awe-inspiring things, such as maxing sailing in under a week, as someone who has only been playing for like 4 months, is because he connected with the management side of RuneScape. His first 99 was farming. Doing herb runs and stacking up resources for PVM grinds was satisfying content to him. He didn't hate that side of the game. He actively encouraged it, recognized that without it, the game would fail in its goal of being a long-term MMO. After all, he's no stranger to grinds. He did over 2,000 solos of a dungeon in Classic when farming a dagger. While for most Classic WoW players, the longest grind in the game is the Journey to Max, for OSRS players, that would be nothing, breakfast. That's not to say that WoW Classic didn't have insane grinds such as rank 14, but that they weren't mandatory or done by most players, and in the case of rank 14, no longer exist in the way they used to.
And then I saw like a lot of other WoW content creators were playing it for like a month or so, right? And I was like, I just tried the game out for a few days right before Mists of Pandaria launched, and ended up liking it. It was fun. I ended up stopping playing MOP, played it for like a couple days only, and then I went back to RuneScape. Definitely the early game wasn't like the best compared to how it is now, but it's just like you gradually unlock quality of life, and it just makes the game feel better over time. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like the game design of it, right? Like where you unlock like traveling with fairy rings, and you can use law runes to teleport around. So it's just kept getting better and better. And I'm still playing. I've like, what is it, 80 days now on my own on my account.
Love
which is
that.
ridiculous.
Meanwhile, other WoW turned OSRS streamers took an entirely different approach to the game. Guzu is likely the most well-known convert, as his guideless quest cape journey created some truly memorable moments. It captured the same feelings that early episodes of Alien Food's Unguided series did, wherein a player discovers the wonders of the world unbegotten to metas and viewer demands. While Guzu didn't connect with the management side of RuneScape as much, he did resonate with an aspect that most streamers didn't: the quests. Arguably one of the most, if not the most distinguishing feature of this MMO that most people overlook. Quests in RuneScape are single-player adventures filled with challenges, puzzles, and quite a lot of dialogue. While you can use the Quest Helper plugin to simplify them, just the sheer fact that a RuneScape quest can kill your character in a boss fight distinctly separates them from other MMOs. You may be facing an existential, strangely barefooted threat in World of Warcraft, but it clearly isn't doing much to damage you, to hurt your character, so why should you care or believe in that threat? On the other hand, in OSRS, you are not only dying to certain quest bosses, but sometimes are doing so repeatedly. It's unique that quests aren't there to be repeatable chores to slop through on your way to max level, but are a separate side of the game. They benefit your character's progression by granting great rewards and act as goals to achieve in and of themselves. Out of all of these players, Guzu's journey felt the most insular and compact. Most viewers likely understood that after the quest cape, he would explore different avenues or return back to WoW. But along those same lines, I think most players know that when OSRS receives a new quest, or a set of new quests, he may be the first back in line to experience them. Sodapoppin's initial interest in OSRS is likely what popularized the meta after Guzu jump-started it. While I don't have much to say about Sodapoppin, as he didn't play the game enough to understand it or take something away from it, he is an influencer that now is responsible for some of the most memorable events in both games, WoW and RuneScape. In WoW, he played a role in orchestrating OnlyFans, which contributed a lot of publicity to Classic WoW's anniversary release, and in OSRS, he played a role in putting together the OTK event, pitting streamer against streamer in one of the most bizarre and funny crossovers in recent memory. His influence was felt, even if not in-game. Xaryu is an interesting case. He didn't play as much OSRS as some of his peers had, but his takeaways were fascinating. His adventure into RuneScape felt like a fact-finding mission. I never got the impression that he would quit WoW, but rather explore an alternate world and then apply that world's success to WoW. Out of all these streamers, Xaryu spent a lot of time post-OSRS thinking about the elements of the game that would apply well to Classic Plus, the version of Classic WoW that fans are eagerly waiting for, a version that would turn Blizzard's penchant for re-releasing old content on its head by having them create actually new content for Classic WoW, and potentially set it on a separate path to the main game, much like OSRS did to RuneScape 3 all those years ago. As a WoW player, I'm excited to see what Classic Plus looks like. As a RuneScape player, I'm incredibly skeptical. I made an entire video about why, one that not only became my most controversial, but was also reacted to by Xaryu and gave me the opportunity to reach out and ask about the topic of this video. This is what he said. In my eyes, it came down to two things mainly. The first reason is that most WoW creators/streamers are streamers, meaning they need to do what's best for them, but also for their communities. and when they were originally playing OSRS, they had an influx of 2 times or 3 times normal viewership, so as a streamer, it's a no-brainer to play more of that game, but once that falls off, it becomes harder to justify even if you're enjoying the game. The harder question to answer is, why did the viewership fall off? Novelty wearing off, or mid-game too grindy? I believe the masses get bored of the repetitive nature of the mid-game, even if it is good game design. My suggestion? Mains can easily be cheated by being given some of the best loot in the game, making them not as good to stream because it undermines the entire journey of obtaining items when everything is given to you. And Ironman have an insane grind that is tough to stream to a super large audience because of how grindy it can get. Although I believe Irons to be more fun to watch than mains for the most part, the journey, I think a bronze man of sorts, minus the PvP portion, i.e. no lootable items in PvP, would solve this. This would cut farming down by a ton and also allow for an authentic journey without handouts. This type of game mode, I believe, would have appealed the most to nearly every WoW streamer, but it didn't exist officially. After returning to WoW, Xaryu created a spreadsheet of all kinds of different ideas that could be added to Classic Plus, and then polled his viewers on each one using the very same polling breakpoints that Jagex does for OSRS, 70% to pass. I also spent a couple hours discussing this very spreadsheet with resident OSRS chunkman Josh Isn't Gaming on an upcoming episode of Fireside, my podcast, so look out for that on my second channel within the next week or two. Anyway, Xaryu's takeaways are very important to understand because they will help us tie things together in this video's conclusion. I think it's fair to say that Sardaco went hard. He, alongside Jokered, spent more time than anyone else in RuneScape, and has the achievements to prove it. He got the first Bofa and the first Inferno Cape. RuneScape's PVM clearly resonated with him. I also spent some time speaking to him on stream about OSRS, Classic Plus, and the topic of this very video. He had a similar takeaway to Xaryu. An official Bronzeman mode with restricted PvP would have kept more WoW streamers playing. I'd be hard-pressed to disagree, since adding new game modes doesn't damage OSRS at all. You really don't need new servers or to split the player base to include them. While I know there were other streamers checking the game out, I think my broad conclusions about Burnout apply to them well enough that I don't need to spend more time analyzing specific cases. But shout out to them nevertheless, you can see some of them on screen here. The final content creator I want to mention isn't a streamer at all. MadseasonShow is the most well-known classic WoW YouTuber. He has been making WoW content for over a decade and has made a brand out of his monotone voice, compelling analysis, and predictions over impending monetization. Told you so. Over a year ago, he checked out Oldschool Runescape and enjoyed it so much that he wanted to create an unguided series. It quickly became one of my favorite pieces of OSRS content ever. It tapped into that alien food unguided appeal while coming from a voice that has never touched the game before. Watching him stumble through without even the pre-existing context of how the game works is incredible. Seeing him discover how to splash on seagulls in Port Sarim totally through deduction, or spending dozens of hours grinding Wintertod for a dragon hatchet. Seeing him wrangle the game's occasionally obtuse systems is not only some of the best content, it's crucial for game design too. That's the benefit of having so many new players check out OSRS, and why it has seen so much growth over the past few years. While the jagged edges of the game are nostalgic and very important to keep in some ways, they aren't all winners. Over time, Jagex and plugin developers alike have alleviated many of the overbearing points of friction and created a much more palatable onboarding experience. In no small part thanks to content creators like Madseason, who point out flaws that have been ignored thanks to a player base that hasn't made new accounts in many years. Since he started playing, the game added login tips, skill summaries, and slightly more guidance that made Oldschool Runescape more approachable without sacrificing its identity as an old-school MMO. Many of these streamers have left, but not without making an indelible mark on the game we all love. RuneScape only benefited from their presence. They showcased the flaws and successes of the early game, allowing Jagex to continue improving aspects that aren't criticized enough. They personally experienced an entirely different subgenre of MMO, and most importantly, they created amazing content for all of us to watch. The one thing that didn't benefit, yet, is World of Warcraft. In fact, this is where things become complicated. Many streamers and viewers that play both games or just WoW have settled on a single takeaway: make Classic Plus like Oldschool RuneScape. They love WoW, they want Classic Plus to be successful, and OSRS looks like the kind of paradigm to apply. My controversial video on this subject essentially took the counter to that, arguing that WoW does not have the systems, backend, and community necessary to translate old-school RuneScape success, and in addition to that, doesn't have a company running it with a vision for the game's future. You can't just cherry-pick parts of OSRS you like without acknowledging how crucial the parts you don't are. The management side of OSRS, the herb runs, the farming, the fletching, the crafting, that is what breeds longevity. That's what makes RuneScape a long-term MMO, and why even classic WoW struggled to retain persistent activity outside of its patches. For example, many WoW players look to OSRS and say, I wish WoW could make the kinds of solo challenges RuneScape has, without understanding that it can't. Not really. RuneScape isn't driven by the holy trinity of tank, DPS, and healers. It doesn't have classes or respective specializations, meaning that every player has access to the same utilities and offensive approaches as any other. There are no limits to what you can and can't be based on choices you made during character creation. The roles and specializations associated with the Holy Trinity are crucial for WoW's identity. They aren't conducive to solo challenges. The only method through which this would be possible would be if Blizzard dedicated an inordinate amount of time creating challenges for specific specializations, like 30 of them. It's untenable from a content creation standpoint. And we know this because they've kind of tried it before. In the Legion expansion, there was a patch that added an activity called the Mage Tower, which was a solo challenge that awarded a unique cosmetic for your specialization. It was actually a collection of 7 challenges, with each individual one encompassing a certain grouping of specializations that had the utilities required to deal with those specific encounters mechanics. It was really good, actually. I loved getting the appearances back in 2017. But that was in a version of the game where classes are already homogenized. Most already had interrupt, self-heals, and other forms of CC. That is not the case in Classic. Specializations are very different from one another. Some tanks, like the Protection Paladin, don't even have a taunt button. Utilities are separated, with only some classes and specializations able to do things like solo dungeons. You wouldn't be able to create 7 encounters, you'd need to create over 20. The only other solution is to apply the same level of homogenization that would kind of ruin the spirit of Classic WoW's classes. So while it is easy to say just do what RuneScape does, they can't. It doesn't map on, and when one quits RuneScape because of the, say, overbearing management grind, only to turn around and say, man, I hope Classic Plus copies RuneScape. No, you don't. And it can't. WoW players aren't going to like that. You won't like that. The game doesn't have the infrastructure necessary for long-term horizontal progression. The only way OSRS achieved this is by not being as combat-focused. Much like my takeaway in that one controversial video, it's a ship of Theseus. To create a sustainable future for Classic Plus, you'd need to perpetually strip it of elements that define World of Warcraft. And while I would personally like Blizzard to swing for the fences and truly try something different, I fear that a lot of WoW players may not want that at all. It's part of the reason why many of these streamers played more OSRS than they did Classic Anniversary, even though many of the former systems didn't appeal much to them. This is RuneScape's identity. It's not that WoW or Blizzard shouldn't take it, it's that they probably can't. I asked Xaryu what he hopes Classic Plus takes from Oldschool RuneScape. He said this: my final takeaway is that every game is different, and you can't one-for-one copy everything for other games like WoW because it simply doesn't work. Skilling doesn't exist in WoW, and it doesn't need to necessarily. Things like WoW having classes, larger raids, etc., these are staples of WoW and make it so that you can't just copy-paste all things from RuneScape. So the idea is to honor that the games are different, but still gain inspiration from some things that work, mainly systems. The biggest by far in my eyes are 1. The voting system, 2. Honoring the tradition of the game, and 3. When adding new content, it shouldn't completely invalidate all of the old content. It's easy to see where he's coming from, and I generally agree. Our views do differ slightly though, such as my perspective that I don't think polling would work in Classic because the player base doesn't have a general broad vision for the game and haven't yet been put in the position to need to consider its longevity in the future, which could lead them to vote in things that seem appealing in the present but detract from its future sustainability. The success of polling in OSRS first stemmed from the community's fear of change. This allowed the developers to prove themselves, create a vision for the future, and only then pitch ideas that are larger, greater, evolutionary. If this collective detour into old school RuneScape improves another world that I love dearly, then that's nothing but a win in my book. I don't think World of Warcraft is cannibalizing RuneScape's player base. It's not similar enough of a game, but I do think it can learn from RuneScape's successes. And the first place to start, if not the developers, is the influencers that can create the necessary conversations to make that happen. If I am to wish for something, it'd be for all of these talented content creators to lay the foundation needed for Classic Plus, not for it to exist, but for it to thrive. So, why are WoW players quitting old school RuneScape? Well, I'm not sure if they are, because they're taking just a little bit of RuneScape back with them.